Hello, I'm male feminist Anders Bloom, and because all lives matter here at Thorin's channel, I give you a big welcome.
With the German team BIG winning over G2 and with the home crowd at ESL One Cologne going crazy, people are obviously going to invoke the home crowd effect, home field advantage as it's called in traditional sports, and the idea that if the crowd is behind you, it buoys you up, it helps you win the game, makes it harder for the opponent, gives you this edge or this advantage, and that's what people typically ascribe as the advantage of having the home crowd, having the home field. Now, this is one of the reasons why ESL wanted this team there and invited them when actually they hadn't done anything in terms of accomplishments to deserve a direct invite, because they wanted a home crowd. Maybe you get more fans go and buy tickets. You have more of a crowd environment where people are cheering for a specific team no matter what, not just because it's a great team or it's a great match. Also, this is one reason why people might have anticipated that when BIG was able to make it to the Lanxess and narrowly edge out North and then MIBR, that maybe this home crowd would give them the fire to be able to perform at a higher level, make the semis as they indeed have done. So you've got to ask this question. Does having the home crowd, or at a very minimum, the crowd being behind you, because obviously you'll have teams like Virtus.pro who can be massively popular even when they're abroad. Does this help you? Does it overwhelmingly have a positive effect? Now, most people are going to immediately say yes, because there are clearly anecdotal examples of where it seems like it did have an effect, or a player says it helped them, or they like to hear the crowd roaring and it gives them confidence or makes them believe that they're on home territory. But I actually think it's more of a nuanced, subtle topic than people might have realized if you think it through in all the possibilities and permutations. I think it goes both ways. It can help and it can hurt. So obviously, coming from traditional sports, it's understandable why the home crowd advantage exists. In American sports like basketball, the NFL, National Football League, American football, ice hockey, NHL, NBA. In these sports, you only have the home crowd. Therefore, they are booing the opponent. They are cheering for you. You're at home anyway. So physically, you're in the same location where you're comfortable. You don't have jet lag. You don't have to travel more. You're not in a hotel somewhere. You're with your family. You're with your support network. There's many reasons as to why the crowd effect would help, and being home generally might help you. Now, in football, it's less so. Obviously, in soccer in Europe, you have scenarios where there's an away crowd. It's a smaller crowd section, sure. But even so, the legendary teams, again, they tend to have these home crowd records. One of the most famous ones, if you go back to the 90s, was Manchester United at Old Trafford, was just never losing for years and years. If you go into basketball, a very, very famous record is the 1986 Celtics, Boston Celtics, considered one of the greatest teams of all time. They famously won 40 out of 41 games that were held at home, so unbelievably good because they were one of the all-time great defensive teams and all-round squads. Now, let's talk about how it helps you to have the home crowd. First and foremost, before it even gets to you and the fact that you have the home crowd, the fact that you have the home crowd and the opponent doesn't have the home crowd is one area it can help you. If you have an opponent who's at all mentally fragile, or they're brittle in any sense, if they get to a certain threshold of a difficult time in the game, they lose certain rounds, they feel like no one's cheering for them, the crowd's cheering against them and for you, maybe that breaks them. In this scenario, they might feel more pressure, that they know everyone wants them to lose, everyone's cheering for the other team. They might feel a lack of support. No one's cheering for them. When they have a good round, no one reacts in any way. They just have to be in their own little world of 5 or 6 of them versus everyone. It's them versus the world. They also might be more crushed when they feel like people actively cheer when they lose a round. I actually think that might have been a factor that added to the pressure on FaZe Clan in that final versus Cloud9 at the E-League Boston Major. It was not just that there was the weight of their moment, they were supposed to crown their era, they were supposed to on paper win this, it's an opponent they've beaten many times. I also think the fact that the crowd was so against them, you could see they were very tentative. Maybe that was an additional tertiary or secondary factor. I don't think it was the main factor. I still think, like my saying I always have is that boos don't block headshots. Well, likewise, cheers don't make your aim any more accurate. So I don't think it was the number one factor, but I do think it played a role to some degree. I also think in terms of the teams that have the home crowd, there's a psychological effect that they know they have the home crowd. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes. They know it's my home field, my home territory. Everyone here wants me to win. Everyone here thinks I'm good. Like, yes, maybe that could have a mild placebo-type psychological effect on you to make you feel more confident in the game. Doesn't mean you'll necessarily win, but it might help you feel more comfortable and feel more excited about this game and putting on a show for your fans. I also think when the game is going your way and you have the home crowd, now this can be where it might start to have an effect, particularly obviously a psychological one, because you're winning epic rounds and then that's making the crowd even more excited and that's making you think, I can do anything right now. Everyone in this room believes I can. You sort of have the suspension of disbelief. It buoys you up overall. You keep that momentum going. You feel like, more and more confident, more and more. Now, sometimes that means you go for crazy plays, ones you wouldn't pull off. I mean, in today's game, Smoothie, some of those ridiculous jumping shots, some of the clutches he went for with really ballsy, decisive moves. Maybe he wouldn't do that if there wasn't a crowd all behind him. Obviously, he's from the UK, but he's playing for the German team. Maybe it wouldn't feel like he could do everything or anything in that sort of a setting otherwise. And this is obviously, by the way, the main effect that it sparks people calling it the home crowd effect and why pro athletes are familiar with that. But I also think the home crowd and the home crowd effect can hurt you. First of all, take the same scenario before. The game's going your way. You're doing amazingly. You feel so fired up. You're winning the odd epic round. You're getting even more confident. You feel like you can go for any play in the world. Well, it's not like those work all the time. Let's say the crowd's pushing you. You get a couple of kills. They're going crazy. There's one guy left to get. If you win this round, if you get this kill, you win the round, you win the game, you win the series. Sometimes you overreach. You get too horny for the kill. You go super aggressive because everyone's making you believe you can do it. It doesn't matter you have 10 health and that he's got his position with the orb. You killed the last guy. You're going to kill this guy. This is like a movie. Everyone's going nuts. You get too hyphy. You get too aggro. You attempt to force plays to work that might not otherwise work. I've seen many home teams that were in amazing circumstances that lose. An obvious example for me would be the Astralis team that had the stand-in, if you remember last year at Blast.pro series, where they were in a situation where they were unable to win that final. They were on match point, in fact. They had an amazing first map against SK Gaming. Everything looked amazing. Dupree was going off, and they weren't able to take down the title. They weren't able to secure it in the end. Then you go and you look, what about teams that are mentally weak, but they've got the crowd going for them? So, first of all, they think, the crowd wants me to win. The expectations, they can put too much pressure on themselves. Obviously, that's the worst thing for a player that's really, really emotional, can be easily swayed, is when he gets in his own head and the expectation of everyone wanting you to win, everyone pulling so hard for you to win, everyone expecting you win, that can fuck with some people. Then you've got to factor that because the crowd's waiting to cheer for you, and the second you do something amazing, they're going to go nuts when you hit a slump in the game. When you're not hitting your shots, when you're losing all your 1vx situations, when you're getting clean swept and your tactics failing, now the silence becomes deadly to you, because that silence isn't just because you didn't do something. It's because no one's got anything to cheer about. You're letting everyone down. The expectations are crazy, and you're fucking up in front of everyone. Your family, your friends. This is supposed to be your home territory. You're supposed to be defending home soil, and you're messing it up. You're losing the game. I mean, an obvious example I could give you here would be the Envious team, the really great French team, when they were playing Fnatic with Flusher and Olaf and Crims at DreamHack Tours 2015. It was on home soil. Envious won map 1, which was cash. They looked like, right, in this veto, Dust 2 rather, they thought, right, this is our chance to actually win the series, and they blew it. They lost. Fnatic won the series. Fnatic was booed. They were the villains. Didn't matter. And actually, the fact that the crowds went really silent, I thought really hurt the French, actually. They looked more hesitant. They seemed like they knew they were fucking up. They knew Fnatic were the better team. They hadn't beaten Fnatic in a best of 3 on LAN at that point in time. Obviously, Fnatic had only forfeited that famous DreamHack Winter 2014 series, and the two teams had never met, or Fnatic had won each time before that. So this actually compounded the pressure for the French team, for Envious. Then you've got to consider, it also doesn't necessarily help you. In fact, it can hurt you when the crowd is on your side, so that already can have a negative effect on you sometimes. But even worse, the team you're playing is very mentally strong, and they're used to traveling, and they play as well away as they play at home. It doesn't even matter to them. So let's think of some classic teams. Ninjas in Pajamas, Virtus.pro, Fnatic 2015. These teams can win anywhere and pretty much have won anywhere, and have had epic matches no matter the opponent, no matter the crowd, no matter whether anyone was cheering for them. Now sure, teams like NIP and VP, in part because they've done that and because they're so durable and so classically epic in big matches, at least up until a couple of years ago, that's also a self-fulfilling prophecy. It means that they then get more fans in the neutral sense, or even home crowds that'll cheer for them. And then on top of that, people are going to cheer no matter where they are. So true, they're never truly away from home entirely. Then you've got to add that a team like Fnatic are the best example of where they're so mentally strong, it doesn't matter if the crowd's cheering for you. These guys embraced being villains in 2015. After that Olaf Boostgate moment at DreamHack Winter 2014, the whole scene hated them. Even pro players thought they cheated. People thought that what they'd done was unethical or immoral, or that they should even be punished outright for it, even though they forfeited and they lost that major and gave it up to rivals LDLC. The next year, numerous crowds cheered against them, famously ESL1 Cologne 2015, when actually they'd won the series, the semi-final against Virtus.pro. Taz had to come out and tell the crowd not to fucking boo Olaf Meister, the best player in the world. As I said, the DreamHack Tours example, because everyone was going for Envious. People booed Flusher and I think Pronax when they came out. They were just laughing. They didn't give a fuck. Those guys, because they actually wouldn't have survived as a team, they thought about a couple of them retiring. I think it was Olaf Meister and Krims after DreamHack winner 2014, before all their majors and all the amazing extra success that completed their era. Because they didn't break at that moment, and they almost became anti-fragile, to use the Nassim Taleb concept, it meant that when you cheered against them, they didn't give a fuck because they were the best. They knew they could win. They knew they could beat you anyway. And hey, let the crowd cheer for the opponents. We love being the villains. We love silencing the crowd, taking the trophy from them. And by making it so that couldn't defeat them, that also made it actually sometimes hard to have the expectations on you as a team, as Virtus.pro found out in Katowice in Poland, as the likes of Envious found out when they were on home soil, as NIP found out sometimes when they were in Sweden and they had to play against them. The conclusion I would come to here is that, first of all, the main reason why having a home crowd effect is cool is because maybe people get more into it than they do in a neutral sense, where you have some fans of this crowd, some fans of this one, some that just want to watch great Counter-Strike. Maybe people with their tribalistic history and almost buried in our DNA and our programming, maybe that helps them get more excited, in which case the general ambience becomes more epic anyway. And therefore, when there's then amazing plays, the greatest players of all time in most esports rise to the level of their opponent, of the moment in the tournament, of the ambience and how epic the moment is. So if you have a really epic ambience or an atmosphere primed to go crazy, then great players are going to give you great matches and are going to play great regardless of where they're from and where the home crowd's from. Then you've got to add in, because it forces you to feel the pressure of the moment, players that live up to that pressure, players that thrive on that pressure, and it makes them feel like they're locked in and they can never give an excuse and, I was just kind of messing around, I didn't put my full attention in. It takes away a lot of those excuses. That's why majors have so much pressure and are so cool in that particular respect, and you want a good crowd at majors. But they can help, having the home crowd can help you, and it can hurt you. Now, luckily, the fact it's not clear is a really good thing, because it means that actually it's not that unfair if we don't have an event, for example, in Denmark ever, and all the Danish teams don't get a home crowd, or if we have tons of events in Poland or in Sweden, and then the Swedish and the Polish teams get a boost. Because if it was the case that overwhelmingly and almost without fail, the home crowd always helped the home team and hurt the team that wasn't from the home crowd, then I think actually it would be unfair the way we do the circuit. You'd have to acknowledge that. You'd have to say having so many majors in Poland gives VP an extra chance. And you know what? They did go very deep in most of those majors. You'd have to say that having all those dream hacks in Sweden and having a number of top tournaments there, that helped the NIP guys. Oh, that's unfair if you're the French guys and you only have one tournament a year in your country. Obviously, America's had many, many, many tournaments even when they didn't have the best teams. But I don't think that's the case. Now, I also think because you have mixed crowds, because you can have, even in a home crowd, many people come from Poland or Sweden or wherever they come to support a big name team, and people do treat the big ones, for example, the majors, as like events where they travel in from around the world. It's not just a home crowd. It also offsets any advantage you would get, because obviously in a world where it's like the NFL and you have to go and play in the Seahawks stadium where they have that amazing crowd that goes utterly nuts and the decibels are off the roof, etc., that would be really unfair if we held the equivalent of 5 of the Super Bowls there and the Seahawks just get a mad advantage. Meanwhile, the team from Arizona just never gets to play there and they don't have a home crowd themselves. Yeah, that would be unfair. So luckily, it's not the case. I think it's a nuanced topic. Again, it goes team by team, both in terms of the home team and the away team, as to whether it helps, whether it hurts you. But overall, I would say generally, it just provides a better atmosphere and a cooler atmosphere, whether you're the team that's got the crowd behind you or the team that's potentially getting to silence the crowd and feel like you won out us against them, as famously Neo and Taz did at ESWC 2007, where even though they weren't against a home crowd of the opponent, they were playing against MTW from Denmark. It was actually NOA at the time, but later became MTW. And the whole crowd in that French crowd wanted MTW to win, NOA. And so then when the Poles won, they said it felt like it was us against the whole world. And then it was even more satisfying when they won. This video was kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Alex Adams, Daniel Yordanov, TTMXMP, VeXii, HawpT, Robert Baxter and Travis Greb, with a special thanks going out to Jerky's Minion. Want teasers for my upcoming content? To ask a question for my monthly AMA? How about taking part in a discussion with me about esports? Or perhaps you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Become a part of the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.